Brett Contreras, the glute guy, he's very good at doing hip thrusts. He came up with this exercise. He came up with machines. He came up with all sorts of things to target his glutes. He is the master of glute training. Academically and also practically, he's trained lots of people to develop glutes. In an interview recently, he was talking about this, and I heard him say something that absolutely lit my brain up. He said that he wasn't very good at squatting. He wasn't very built for it. And I thought to myself, well, that is interesting. Isn't that interesting? And the reason why I say that is because, well, here's a guy that's taking an exercise to the max. He's really, really taken this exercise for a decade or even longer to the extreme. Not only does he believe in it, he's done research in it, he's trained other people. He really understands glute thrusts, hip thrusts. But he's not very good at squatting. And that's very interesting to me for this reason. What if there was a guy that was, a PhD in lunges? A guy that is dedicated 10 years of his life to research and training of lunges. Which person would have a better squat? And I like to think about these extremes purely for a mental exercise to compare and contrast movements and then try and break them down mentally into what is actually going on with those movements and why is one better carrying over to the squat or the deadlift or whatever have you. My gut feeling is, okay, so how is this guy, glute thrusting, hip thrusting 5, 6, 7, 8 plates, like huge amounts of plates. I've seen people move extraordinary amount of weight with hip thrusts. I've seen girls in the gym move crazy amount of weight as well. 200 kilos, 220, 230 kilos on the glute, on the hip thrust with the barbell. And yet they can't squat 100 kilos. And you sit there and you're like, wow, what is going on there? And so then you think to yourself, well, how much do glutes play a part in squats? How much are they responsible for actually doing the movement? No doubt glutes are part of the movement. There's no doubt about it. But if you're trying to work out what is more beneficial, just think about what's carrying over more. So here's a guy, Brett, very smart individual, very well respected in the literature world, in academic world. He knows what he's talking about. And so his whole thing was hypertrophy, getting girls to have, stronger glutes looking, bodybuilding, physique, all that stuff. That's his world. But, as a byproduct, there's also a bit of a case study here to be learned about, well, how much of that is actually carrying over to strength. It would be fair if these girls were getting huge glutes, he's got huge glutes, strong glutes, and all of them have like really impressive squats. Then we'll be like, wow, okay, so there's something about this exercise that's making a whole bunch of people, a huge population of people out there that are doing this exercise, really strong in squats. But it's not the case. I've seen it personally, girls, some of the girls that I work with who, basically it's like this, man. Every other girl that goes to the gym, part of the routine is always some sort of glute thrust, hip thrust. That's kind of the new fad. Everybody wants to have big glutes if you're a girl, right? And so everyone's doing them, but not a lot of girls can squat. And so I'm thinking to myself, today is my posterior leg day. And I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Should I do this, that, the other, hamstring curls, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to mix it all up. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to do split squats. Why? Well, because split squats challenges the glutes in a long position. It stretches the glutes and it really loads the glute at its maximum at the bottom of the lift when I'm touching the knee on the ground. And that glute needs to really contract to get me out of it. So it's a peak contraction is at the long portion of the movement, where the muscle is long. With hip thrusts, it's actually the opposite. The peak contraction is when you're looking to weigh it out, when the glutes are the shortest. And so why does that matter? Well, it matters for a multitude of reasons, but for hypertrophy reasons, apparently the talk is that the exercises which have you stretching your muscle the most produce the most amount of hypertrophy. Well, it seems to be that the same is true for strength. And so the overall consensus here is that stretch that muscle as much as possible and contract it. Long range of motion seems to work really, really well for strength. So if you're thinking about exercise selection, well, shit, man, I reckon split squats are better than glute thrusts. Both hit the glutes. One uses a fraction of the weight that the glute thrusts and the hip thrusts use, yet the results are better. This is where physics come into the picture, and you're like, oh, damn, there's a lot of weight on that bar when you're doing hip thrusts, and yet how much is the muscle actually working? Physics leverages. A lot of that comes into play. Today I decided to do split squats. Man, I'm doing a fraction of the weight. Obviously, I'm doing high reps, and I've done very heavy split squats, Bulgarian split squats in the past, built up to it. More than 50% of my bilateral or normal squat. So there's something there as well. But I want to hit the posterior part of my leg. I've got X amount of energy, X amount of time in the gym. What am I going to really dedicate my time to? And this is where exercise selection comes into play. Obviously, you can do it all. Do 3 weeks of split squats and then do, glute thrusts, hip thrusts, whatever, just mix it all up. That's fine. And that's kind of the flavor that I'm in right now. But when you're thinking about the efficacy of a movement, it is interesting. There is a guy who dedicated his life to one machine or one movement, and he does not do this well. This, and this. But he does this well, this. Okay, so that's interesting. What do you extrapolate out of that information? And for me, I love doing this stuff, man. There's that, what's his name? Robert Forsterman. Oh, I'm surprised I remembered his name. Who is a velodrome cyclist, huge, freaking massive legs. I don't know what that guy's eating and drinking, but the dude looks like a freaking monster bodybuilder. He looks like a Tom Platz type of guy, huge legs. And he's a monster split squatter, Bulgarian split squatter. Interesting. Has a very good squat. I think he can squat up to 600 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't watched a video of his in a while, but it's definitely over 5 plates. Definitely over 5 plates. I think I've seen him rep out 220 like nobody's business. So here is a guy that is really, really good at split squats, and he can also squat, barbell squat really, really well. I've never seen him glute thrust. And those glutes are humongous. Those legs are humongous. And so, are we wasting our time? Those of us that are interested in strength, are you wasting your time in doing this? And at the same time, a girl's wasting their time doing the glute thrust. Should we be recommending more stretching exercises? You can't stretch anything in a hip thrust. Very, very short movement. It's just interesting to think about it. And, and when you bump into characters like this, you're like, wait a minute, man. If this exercise is really good, I reckon Brett should be squatting 600 pounds. He's not a little guy either. I think he's taller than me. I think he's over 100 kilos. I could be wrong, but he looks a strong guy. He looks like a big dude. Interesting. Now, I don't know how much he's into strength or whatever, but he knows his stuff. He really knows his stuff. But it got me thinking, my God. Here is a guy that has no weaknesses in his glutes at all because of the hip thrust. It makes you think. It really makes you think. Maybe that strength that he's built in the hip thrust is really good at quarter squatting. Maybe he can quarter squat like a ton. I don't know. Because that's kind of short range of motion. But maybe he really drops off his capacity to move weight when he goes below that quarter squat. Because, after the quarter squat, when you get to 90 degrees, the hip thrust doesn't really train that 90 degree range of motion really well. And maybe that's what he's missing. So it's, it really kind of makes you think, what are we doing here, man? What are we doing here? That's kind of the reason why I started doing split squats today. I just kind of ran it through my mind, and I'm like, yeah, something doesn't make sense here, man. Something is amiss here. I'm not going to be as good as Brett on the hip thrust anytime soon. He's got a decade on me. But should I really spend time doing that? Because I don't see him squatting crazy amount of weight. Is it a tool? For sure. Absolutely for sure. But if you're going to think to yourself which way to go, left, right, or center, take some of that information and make whatever you want of it. In my mind, I'm like, that Robert fella, he's split squatting like a maniac. He seems to be doing a little bit better than this guy. Obviously, there's a lot of variables here. There's drugs, there's, one guy's an Olympian, the other guy isn't. The other guy's just a regular guy training people in the gym. So, comparing oranges and apples and all that stuff, I get all of that. It's just from a conceptualizing the two exercises, what is more beneficial for glutes, both for hypertrophy and strength? I would say some sort of split squat variation, Bulgarian split squats, normal split squats, dumbbell, barbell. I reckon that's probably better purely because there is better stretch on the muscle, better loading potential for the muscle, and it's more applicable to what we're trying to do in a squat, especially if it's ATG. If you're squatting ATG and you're trying to do hip thrusts, I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. Appreciate you guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.